Cool.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So we're doing it. I said this last time.
This is just a practice run, right?
We're doing it. Now this is going to go live, so make sure you say a lot of offensive stuff to all the people out there. If we're going to get booted, let's just go ahead and get on with it.
Yeah.
So,
Canceled, you mean? Canceled.
Yeah. Whatever.
I can't get canceled. I've got too much on the line.
I can't even get canceled, right? Yeah. Yeah, up until now, it was like a total ghost on social media. I barely existed.
Yeah, I just turned my Facebook and Instagram and like turned on monetization like just last week. I've never done it before.
Nice. Well, that's funny because, one of the reasons that we're talking is that's kind of what I guess let's start with this because I think this is funny. So we've known each other for a long time.
Only about 40 years.
Yeah. So, and the funny thing is that we grew up together, and then we both went off into different directions, which we'll probably get into a little bit. And then, I moved back into the area, and I'm like walking around church, and I see, like,
I know that guy.
What is that guy doing here? Where'd you come from? So, it was really cool to reconnect. Yeah. So now, do you remember at all like how we first met?
Oh, I don't remember how we met. Who was your teacher in third grade?
Dude, who knows? Third grade. Hold on.
I had Miss Miracle.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say Miss Miracle is what I was going to go with, but it sounded fake.
Oh, I can look it up on my computer and see if you're in my class picture.
Was that third grade?
Yeah, Miss Miracle. I just know that in third grade, you and
That's
Kyle
true.
Turkel and I hung out at recess a lot.
Yeah.
But how we met or if we were in the same class, I don't know. I do remember Kyle Turkel took us out into the playground and tried to hypnotize us, you and I.
I think I do remember that.
Yeah, so we were out in the field. And he
it'd be crazy is if he walked up the stairs right now and he's been waiting all this time and he's like...
Yeah. We wake up
like naked with no money. That Kyle Turkel.
Yeah, well, he's still around, so invite him on.
On the off chance anybody sees this, they'll be like, hey. Yeah, so it was in third grade. I had a bunch of teachers that sound like fake names for teachers. Like Mrs. Miracle is one. I had
Rash?
a Mr. Nice.
Oh, yeah.
And he was awesome. He was like, yeah, I was actually just telling my daughter about it because my daughter is going to the same high school that I graduated from.
All right.
And it's really trippy being back there. And she actually has a teacher that used to be one of our English teachers, which is also pretty
There's
funny.
still there teachers there, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there might be at Centralia.
I won't say any more about it than that, but yeah, pretty funny. And so we used to, I was telling my kids, we were driving by, where the gravel pit's at.
Oh, yeah.
And I was telling them about
playing basketball.
Basketball in the barn and like with the trampoline.
Yeah, those hoops are still there.
Owl turds and, stepping on like dead mice remains. Good times.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that I could try to explain my childhood to people in Long Island, but I don't think it would make any sense.
It's this barn.
Like we used to walk like a mile or two.
Yeah, we walked through the woods.
I remember even walking down to that convenience store.
Yeah, Country Market.
And then walking like all the way.
Oh, we did walk. We probably did.
Yeah. Throwing like pennies on the train tracks and
duct tape them down.
I was telling my daughter about that. I was like, we used to put pennies on the train tracks. She's like, she's in second grade. She's like, why would you do that?
It's funny because as a kid, I thought that was like standard kid behavior.
Yeah.
Like I thought everyone knew.
Well, it probably was.
Yeah.
But nobody's allowed to get hurt or feel uncomfortable anymore. So train tracks probably not on the table for most folks.
Well, there is a track right, a block away, and the trains go real slow. And I think it's just one of these tracks where the trains back up and maneuver as opposed to go flying through. But I put a quarter on there to show my kids how it's.
Yeah.
But the train's only going like 5 miles an hour because it just slowly goes by.
I'm not sure this thing's recording.
Oh.
I thought. Oh, indeed.
What do you
I
not
accidentally
see?
tapped my mic and muted myself.
Well, we have 3 other audio tracks here.
So, well, there's that. Episode number 1.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So what's funny is that we go do all that. We kind of lose. You did so after high school. When was the last time we really saw each other before we reconnected?
Oh, well, probably 9th grade, right?
Yeah,
You were in
probably
Centralia
after
in
I
9th grade.
transferred. Yeah.
So 93, I think.
Yeah.
To 2023.
Yeah, weird. That's a long time. Yeah, and so after high school, you went into the National Guard, right?
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, actually, I did Centralia College. I got my AA, which bumped me up to an E3 when I joined the Coast Guard, which was just a nice perk.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got my AA, joined the Coast Guard, did that for 4 years, got out, stayed in the reserves, went to school for 3 years, which the Coast Guard paid for.
Nice.
And then
so
moved back here.
What precipitated you going into the Coast Guard? Like, how did that happen?
My cousin Johnny, do you remember him? Johnny Hagen?
Maybe.
I mean, you would know him.
Yeah, I'm sure I would if I saw him.
He lived with us for a long time. But he had joined a year earlier, which really didn't register to me other than, he joined the Coast Guard and he was up in Alaska on like a buoy tender. But I talked to him and he said, yeah, it's fun. You should join, Ike. I said, okay. So I joined.
Yeah.
No, I had no interest in joining the military, but the Coast Guard was more of a job. Like you're stationed at different units where if you're on a black boat, you're working like construction and buoy tenders and building piers. If you're on a white boat, you're doing law enforcement and search and rescue. And if you're on a red boat, you're doing ice breaking. And none of those units are overseas.
Okay.
So you're going to Maine or you're going to Florida or you're going to Seattle, Bremerton. So it just seemed like a fun job. It wasn't like I was joining the military. Although, it was very military, obviously. It was military, and there's...
you got boot camp and all that stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, boot camp, which... looking back, I would say it was kind of fun, but, it was pretty miserable. And I joined, I think, in November in New Jersey, so it was freezing cold.
That is terrible.
Yeah.
I've been in New Jersey at that time.
Yeah. So,
cold.
So that part wasn't much fun. But it was only 2 months. And if you know that they're just trying to break you, if like that's the whole point, is to see if they can make you break.
Sure.
And if you know that's what they're trying to do, then it's not personal. Then you just go with it. But some people couldn't. And some people did break, which was crazy to see. They just shut down and wouldn't respond, and they're yelling at them, and they wouldn't even register, and they'd like, get them out of here, and they send them home.
Crazy. So did you find that part of it fairly natural for you to just endure that, or?
Yeah, I just thought of Simpsons quotes in my head the whole time that made me laugh and not let it bother me. No, I just, I didn't. Most people there could handle it, so it wasn't anything unique to me. But it's just one of those things where you have to get through it, because if you mess up, you're there another week. Like they had these things called trackers. A tracker is like a disciplinary slip, basically, and if your shirt wasn't buttoned right or was out of center, you got a tracker. And if you had, I don't know what the number was, but 20 trackers, you got sent back a week. So then you're at boot camp for 9 weeks. If you don't pass a test, you get sent back a week. And so you have every incentive to do it right and endure it. And ironically, I'm not a great swimmer, and I joined the Coast Guard, but I passed that, which was like the one thing I struggled with, or at least the hardest part about boot camp was passing the swim test for me.
Yeah. It's a mean doggy paddle.
I think I did back float for a lot of it. And then we had to tread water for like a half hour, which I'd never done in my life. And so it's just like, but same thing. It's like, if you stop, you're just gonna have to do it again.
Right.
So you have to make yourself do it. Same thing, like this was when I was in the reserves, but we went to Camp Lejeune for training, and we had to get gassed. And so you put on a gas mask and you run up a hill, and they make you do jumping jacks and push-ups, and you can't breathe. And if you rip off your mask to try to catch your breath, then you have to start all over again.
Yeah.
And so you just have to control your breathing, and then they put you in a chamber, and it all of a sudden feels like you're like, oh, I got some sun today, because you start to feel like it's burning, and then all of a sudden you realize the gas is burning you. And so anyway, you just have to endure it, otherwise you got to do it again. So
Yeah. It's amazing. I was just talking with somebody about this, just how short-sighted. I mean, we can all be that way to a point in certain areas, but how some people, like, their whole life is a short-sighted exercise.
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm not comfortable right this second, like, I can't.
Right, I'll quit and do something else.
Yeah. And, just that little thing of being able to have enough forethought to go, to be able to put it in perspective and say, well, I can endure anything for an hour,
Right,
or
and
I
the
can
funny
endure
thing, well, not
anything for a
funny, but
week.
there's people that couldn't, and so
Yeah.
I could see that. I saw people ripping off their masks, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna have to do it again. I'm not,
Yeah.
I can't let that happen to me. I
Yeah.
got to control my breathing.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. I think it's funny, like, how sometimes, I've talked to my kids about this before, where, there's a lot of our emotions get, like, a bad rap, like fear, anger, and things like that. But they're all there for something, like, God doesn't, like, give you these things for no apparent reason at all. And so, like, it's funny how often fear used properly is like
sure.
a positive emotion. So, like, just the fear of going, like, well, man, I don't like this. If I don't like this now, I'm gonna really hate it if I have to do it again.
Yeah.
Is it's just really funny how some people feel like, and I think we've been made to think this. Man, now I can't remember the name of the book. I've been telling everybody about it, but it's called Bad Therapy. Man, what is her name? It's gonna drive me crazy, but it's such a good book. And if we come up with the name, we'll give her a shout out so that the three of us can listen to it later. And no, I don't know. She might get one book out of it.
Yeah.
Maybe one of you guys will get it. I already got it. But just talking about how this whole shift to
Abigail Schreier.
what's that?
Abigail Schreier.
Yeah, Abigail Schreier. Yeah, she's got a couple really good books. We're just talking about how we've shifted as a culture from just your parents going, just get over it, just get up. If you fall down and hurt yourself, like, can you walk? Or
Yeah.
there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. If you're just hurt, then get up and rub some dirt in it and get on with your day. And now everything is about how you feel about everything.
Well, not my house.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, no, I mean, same thing. I'm really, look at my childhood, and I know me and Mike have talked about this a bunch too. That we didn't get a lot explained to us. It was just, you watched what your parents did, and you would take the things that it seemed like it worked out for them.
Right.
And if you were smart, you did that anyways. And not saying that I'm so smart, but just that's the way to do it is you see the stuff that, and if they did something that didn't work out, you also took note of that. And then it was, you didn't really get mentored in that way a lot of the time. It was just watching and seeing how all that stuff worked out. Now I feel compelled to explain everything to my kids.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they hate it. Maybe when they're older, they'll think some of that was smart, but yeah, and so one of the things in the book that I thought was, I think it's one of those things that's sort of obvious, or, been watching a lot of Jordan Peterson, so I want to say self-evident all the time now.
Well, make sure you
Yeah.
use your hands a little bit when you talk.
Yeah. So anyways, it's one of those things, you hear it. But when you're focusing on your emotions, nobody ever sits down and ruminates on positive emotions.
Right.
Like, you don't ever sit down, if you have a school counselor, or you have a parent or whoever, and they're taking this therapeutic approach to raising or educating or mentoring children, and they're always telling you to think about how you feel and consider how you feel about that and all that stuff. Nobody ever sits around and goes like, man, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Like I've been sitting here for 2 hours thinking about how I feel, and I'm so thankful and so happy. Like you only start to gravitate into negative
Ain't nobody's got
emotions.
time for that though. That's the reason. You can't talk about all your why you're so happy. You gotta just move on.
Yeah. So that's another thing.
My parents, my dad was a construction, my mom was a teacher, and then they had to cook dinner and all that. They didn't have time to sit down and talk with me about anything. Go watch a movie and learn how it's done.
Yeah.
No, they didn't do that actually.
No.
But I mean, no, they didn't. We didn't have any real.
Well, we lived in the country and we didn't have. There was nothing to watch.
Yeah.
Unless we got like a beta.
Yeah.
From somewhere, from Sight and Sound.
That's right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's so we've got this whole thing that's kind of followed everybody now. Our generation, we're adults allegedly, and we're kind of taking up the mantle for our communities and all those things, and we're starting to plug into stuff, and you're seeing it as you go out and you deal with people that there's a large group of people that were kind of raised up in that environment through school, and I think it even kind of affected a lot of people's mentality in our generation. Then it's just a lot more so with our kids' generations, especially in the public school places. But I mean, even in some of the private schools, it's kind of an issue.
Well, somewhere along the line, they started saying it was all participation and points don't matter. Somehow, we got to keep score.
Yeah,
in a football game.
Well, and I mean, what thing did you ever learn by winning? Or things working out exactly the way that you hope they would. It's like,
well, that hard work paid off.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things, but I mean, the heavy lifting of all the lessons that I've learned in my life were things that even when I, to the best of the knowledge that I had at the time, did everything. Like I look back and I go, well, I don't know that knowing what I knew at the time, I would have done anything different. Obviously, now I know more things than I did, but and things still just went poorly, and it's like, you got to look. Well, I mean, and I guess that's the two mindsets, right? Like when things go poorly, you could look outward and go, who did this to me?
Yeah.
Or you can go, well, it doesn't really matter if somebody played a role in this not going well. Like I was still there for it, the whole thing. And so, and I can really only control me a little. I mean, controlling yourself is enough for you to do in a lifetime, right? Like trying to figure out you, and without having to worry about what everybody else is doing. But yeah, I mean, you gotta, do you know who Jim Rohn is?
No.
Not the sports guy, not Jim Rome, but Jim Rohn.
Wouldn't know him either, but okay.
Yeah, that's all right. Jim Rome had one funny thing where he was interviewing Jim Everett, and he was like a quarterback for the Rams, and he kept calling him Chris Everett, who is a female tennis player, and he was doing it on purpose, and that guy tackled him in the middle of the interview. It's pretty funny if you want to look it up on YouTube, but yeah, that was like the first time I ever seen anybody troll anybody. So that was that's an old clip. So Jim Rohn, though, he has this quote that I love. He says, "Don't wish things were easier, wish you were better."
Oh yeah.
And I remember hearing that, being like, man, that is true. Like whenever things are going tough or things aren't working out, or it feels like, everything's lining up against you, or you can't, you just can't get over the hump. I think about that quote, I just need to, wish for myself to be better at all these things. And so how do I work on that? And that's been a really awesome mindset to adopt. Like, I'm really appreciative that I came across that.
Yeah.
and it came at a time where, I really needed that. But yeah, anything Jim Rohn, man.
Yeah, I put quotes.
That dude's.
As a teacher, I put the quote of the day on the board every day. and that was one of the things my students would remember most about my class were the quotes. Not the math,
Yeah.
but a lot of kids would write down the quotes in their notebook and stuff like that, and so they really enjoyed those.
Dude, there is something about a good quote. I
Right.
mean, I love that stuff. I have on my phone, I have just a whole thing whenever I come across something that's like really good, where you read it and you're like, oh yeah, that's, I need to hang on to that. And every once in a while, I'll just kind of thumb through them and be like, yeah, that's good stuff. That's good to know. Good to think about. So the Coast Guard stuff is really interesting to me actually, because I didn't even know that you did that until obviously much later. And I never really, I mean, it didn't surprise me at all, to be honest, like, because you're always kind of an outdoors kind of guy. Like, the adventure aspect of it seems to suit you really well.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. Although I don't know what my reasons really were at the time. I think, like I said, it was pretty basic. My cousin said it was fun, so I
Yeah.
thought, hey, well, really, I
How
thought,
else do you make decisions as a
yeah,
20-year-old
no, I
man?
just didn't actually know what I wanted to do after 2 years of community college, and so I thought a 4-year break would give me
Yeah.
time to figure everything out.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that was really the reason for it. But it was really, I hadn't put a lot of thought into it prior to my cousin mention it, and I
Yeah.
thought, oh yeah, I think that would be a good break between school because I don't know what I want to do. Although at the time, math teacher was my first on my list. And
Really, even at that, like, at that
well,
age.
yeah. Well, because I had basically always helped my friends with math, and so it was one thing that I was. I don't know. I mean, not the one thing, but one thing I was good at was
Yeah.
explaining math to people. And then when I was at Centralia College, I was a math tutor, and so just explaining math is something I'd kind of always done. And my mom was a teacher, my grandma was a teacher, so I mean
That's true.
so that was obviously always in the cards. And but I thought, there's got to be a lot of other options. Well, there are, and I thought, well, maybe I'll be a police officer or get into the FBI or become a physician's assistant. But none of those really aligned with my main goal, which was to raise a family, and all those seemed like they'd take me away from the family, whereas teacher was like,
Yeah.
I could spend time with my family. So,
Yeah.
and it worked out.
Yeah, which is really cool that you bring that up, because I remember, I've got a 20-year-old son, and he's always been interested in maybe being in the military. He hasn't quite made that decision yet, but it's something he's always talked about even since he was a young kid, and I think it'd be a good fit for him. And I've got a daughter who's a junior in high school. It's like crazy. I'm getting old, and it's funny now that they're in that time of life where they're trying to make decisions, thinking about the kind of the transitions that I went through, because I don't want to approach them in these things like, you need to do this and that. I remember how, like, I didn't have any idea what I wanted. I mean, I had a lot of ideas. That's the truth. I had tons of ideas, but it's funny that you say that about the family, because that's kind of how my list changed over time. There's a bunch of things that I wanted to do, or I thought maybe I would want to do, and I would kind of dip my toe in them and kind of start to play that out long term in my mind. And really, when I was little, the only thing I wanted to do was get married, have a family, be a dad. That was like the main priority. And so as I started kind of going through these things that I thought would be fun to do as a career, if I could find a way to make money at it, that kind of kept cropping up for me too. It was like, that's how I whittled down my list, was like, well, but is that going to produce like the day in, day out family life that I'm looking for? Do I want to get married and then be gone all the time? Or, do I want to move my kids around all the time because I'm chasing this dream, and those things it made them not seem important.
Yeah, those kind of jobs are overrated. I mean, you can let those other people do it, but
yeah, or you can just circle back around when you're 45.
It's true.
And start a podcast.
Yeah.
So, no, that's really cool. And I've been talking to a lot of people about this lately as well, because I've been running into some young guys, and I'm really encouraged I mean, there's obviously sort of an epidemic where guys are not getting married. Um, but I am starting to run into a lot of younger guys that's more front of their minds, and it's really encouraging because I think, I was listening to um, Jordan Peterson thing today. Him and Ben Shapiro were talking about, um, that when you're growing up, if everything is about your own personal pursuits, your own self interests, it's just um, it's a really unfulfilling place to be, until, and they're talking about all this other, heady stuff about, sacrifice, how sacrifice has to be the main, um, piece to community and civilization, because, if you're not a sacrificial person, or if you're not sacrificial minded, nobody's going to want to hang out with you if
Right.
everything's about you. So, um, and I think, one of the things that's so important about marriage is that it forces you to think about somebody other than yourself, and if you both can't do that,
Right.
or to the degree that you will or won't do that, that's a lot, that determines a lot of your level of satisfaction in that
And there's a lot
relationship.
of benefit to getting married young for those reasons, because you're 30, things have you're fixed in a lot of your ways.
Sure.
Although there's all kinds of right paths, but
Yeah. But I think it sort of is kind of a marker. I mean, there's a lot of things that, for instance, I mean, living in New York, and growing up here, um, it was interesting how often I ran into people that hadn't had the ability or the opportunity to kind of hit some of these markers. Like, you can't just buy a car and drive a car when you're 16 out there. For one thing, your insurance is like $48,000 a week.
yeah,
So it's like, if you're a kid, you can't. How are you supposed to afford that? Unless your parents are paying for it for you. And there's some kids like that, but they also have restrictions on, at what age you can get a job. And then, of course, there's like 15 million people between the city and the island. So there's a lot of competition for, even though there's a lot of jobs, there's more people.
right.
So it can be kind of challenging. I think especially if you don't know anybody who can kind of help get you a job. And so there's these things that you see, I mean, we were growing up, like, if you hadn't bought your own car by the time you were 16, like, you were a huge loser in this area. You know what I mean?
My parents bought my car.
Did they?
I think so. I don't actually remember. They bought it, but I don't know if I paid them back or not.
Well,
it was only $1,000.
But even so, I mean, you probably had, you had to maintain it, I'm sure.
Right.
There's some level of responsibility. It's really the point. It's not,
It wasn't given.
yeah. So, those are things that, give you an opportunity to go, well, if I want X, I need to do Y thing,
Right. Sure.
And, I think one of the things that, I hope I'm doing this with my kids. I sometimes feel like I'm not doing a great job with it, but helping them understand that, like, the world doesn't care at all what your intentions are. You either do the thing or you don't do the thing. Like, it just takes what it takes.
Right.
So you don't get to put as much effort out there as you feel like putting out, or until you get tired of it. You just have to do the thing until you hit the mark that you got to hit, if you want to stay doing the thing you want to do.
Well, I meant to do it.
What's that?
Well, I meant to do it, and that's
Yeah.
No one cares if you meant to do it.
Yeah, no, but and I think that was another really valuable lesson that I learned when I kind of hit like my various walls in life, where it's like, life doesn't care at all whether I'm doing more than anybody else, or if I'm, anything, or it doesn't care at all. It just takes what it takes. It demands what it demands for what you want, and you either do it or you don't do it. And it just doesn't matter if things are fair. Like, life doesn't care about any of that stuff.
Well, then where are people not getting that message, or why are they not getting that message?
Well, I do.
Why
really
did we
think,
get that message? I don't know if we did or not. Maybe we learned it too late. You just learn it as you go. I mean, that's just how it works anyway. Everyone just has to learn it.
Yeah, I think at some point
on their own path. They'll figure it out, or they won't figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's partly true. I mean, obviously, refer back to Abigail Schreier's book. I think there is some of it that's learned. You get a bunch of adults that say trying your best is all that matters, And that's just not how life works. Like life just does not give a crap about your best, uh, which is another great quote from The Rock. If you've ever, not The Rock the wrestler, The Rock the movie,
Oh.
with Sean Connery.
When something's too good to be
Sean,
true, then it's
Sean
not.
Connery. Yeah, I won't even repeat that quote because it's not appropriate for families. So, but it's pretty funny, and so you go watch the movie if you want. It's like probably circa like '97.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Rock, Nicolas Cage.
Oh, yeah. 90, yeah.
It's a good one.
It's a good one for sure.
But yeah, it just when you kind of come to that realization when you're kind of going from a adolescent young man to kind of transitioning into being a real man, after you've gotten your butt kicked by life for a little bit. And you realize like, as good as I am right now is just not nearly good enough to get the job done,
Yeah.
Whatever the thing is. And I think you have to bump up against that at several points in your life and then make a decision. So am I willing to go back to the drawing board and figure out how I can get that good? Or do I just go, I can't do it. I can't do any more than this. And this is just all that life has for me.
Well, people definitely have more difficult paths for no other reason than that's just the,
100%. Yeah.
what they were given.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, you can do everything and it just doesn't work out, or you can do nothing and it does work out.
Yeah. And at the same time, life doesn't care at all
Yeah.
about any of it. And I think that's one of the things that people really, in this kind of like equality of outcome, or equity society, it's like that it doesn't math right for them, It's like, so I do think some of this has been taught, that people who give, and I don't think this is even happening, but the idea goes something like, if you give equal effort, you should get equal reward. And the fact of the matter is that it doesn't,
Right.
some people, people are starting out at all different spots. It's not like a race where everybody gets to start at the same line. That's just not how life works. It's at one point, there are families that have generationally done things well, and then somebody screws it all up. That happens all the time. And then there are other families where they've done generationally everything wrong, and then somebody knocks it out of the park and really is a change agent in that family line. And it just, life doesn't care about any of that stuff. Or, like for us, we get to be born in America,
Right.
where we've got a lot more freedoms and opportunities than other people in other places.
Well, the thing is, any discussion, or if you try to make things equal, I mean, that whole path just takes you down this victimhood path that doesn't result in anything fruitful.
No.
If you're going to pass blame. So, I mean, life isn't fair, so I guess you got to get over it. What else can you say? I mean, I can't make up for your shortcomings, and you can't make up for mine, and I wouldn't expect you to. And you do your best, I'll do my best, and hopefully that's enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't. If you try to lift, I mean, you can. Well, that's the thing. You can. There's elements you want to bring your society up, but
Sure.
so I mean, it's not maybe as cold as I'm making it, but you can go down if you take it to the extreme, the one viewpoint where it's not fair, so we need to make it fair. Well, that path doesn't lead to, it basically leads to something
Well, that's the
less
thing.
freedom.
How do you make it fair?
It
And
doesn't. That's the thing. It doesn't
that's
need
the
to be
question.
fair. It's life isn't fair. So
Because the only way
you
to
can't
make
start
it,
with the premise of how can we make it fair. It's
well,
just
and who
not.
decides what fair is,
Well,
and
yeah.
and doesn't usually making things fair result in unfairness.
Sure.
in the
I mean, and the
process.
thing, you want different things that I want. So
Sure.
it there's no point in trying to make things fair. If you want a big boat and I want to sit on my butt, then, it's not going to change my outlook and become
Yeah.
more, like I'm going to work harder. If I don't want to work, I don't want to work.
Yeah. And I think that's another really interesting thing that I think is happening right now that I've been thinking a lot about lately is just, you know, like it kind of started. I heard Jordan Peterson say one time that happiness is a really low goal to have, and it's funny because I know that, but I hadn't thought about it much, um, because everywhere you look, people would tell you like the highest goal right now, in our age is to be happy,
Right.
and so it's like one of those things that is true that happiness is not a very good goal. It's a really low goal to have. So I think that that also kind of begs the question, well, what makes something successful, and I think you're kind of alluding to it is that I can't attribute what I think successful is to somebody else. That just and I mean to kind of bring it back home, it's like I can't decide what level of accomplishment counts as successful for my kids because they're going to be their own
But your
people.
family is where you can make the most change.
Correct.
And so,
Yeah,
I mean, you can lead by
absolutely.
example, like you were saying, and your kids can follow that. And
Or
well, or not. But
yeah,
I mean, the other side to it is let the government try to make things fair and make the changes and take the control out of the family because they're going to be the ones. Anyway, so it's like you kind of have the two extremes. Well, I lead towards let the family be the way forward
sure.
to decide what's fair and how to work, and if it doesn't work out, well then I don't know, it's not fair, I guess.
Well, and I mean I think you can apply that logic to literally every, like communism works awesome in my house, you know,
Yeah.
but get any bigger than that and it doesn't work so well, and there's a lot of things like that where there's a lot of things that work great in my house with my group of people, me and my wife's family that we're building together, right? Like there's a lot we can do there that if you make it any bigger than that, even if you just go to a city or even a school or even like a
Well, because you have
church or
a
some
shared
other
values and you
organization,
have
it's like
shared, you and your wife have, hopefully a shared outlook and direction, and you can lead your family in all that one path. You get outside of that, and two families aren't going to have the same direction at all.
yeah. Yeah, and it is funny. I mean, because I mean, we all have. I mean, I would say the three of us are pretty dang close in our outlooks on a lot of things. And I guarantee, if we all like lived in the same house together, or in like some sort of a compound, we'd probably start finding things where we're like, "What is that guy doing? What's
He
wrong
never
with
wears
that dude's
pants.
kids?" And it's like, probably nothing. Probably
Yeah.
nothing's wrong with them. But like, yeah, it in small groups there's a lot of concepts that only work in a small group and they don't transfer out to a large scale project. You
Yeah.
can't having communism amongst two or three people can work for a time, but even that runs out. I mean, once my kids become adults, like communism
Well,
doesn't
they're going
work
to want different
anymore.
things. They're going to want
Yeah.
what they want.
Yeah, and then so then it doesn't work anymore. Now you got to kind of let them create their own commune of one and figure that out. But yeah, I think, um, I think Joe Rogan calls this stuff hustle porn, but like all the like getting people like riled up about success and all that stuff, which some of that stuff I actually
Get into.
like sometimes. Um, but like rare, small doses, because it is a little crazy. But you can't take that and go to somebody in another country that like literally, as far as the options that are available to them, like just staying alive is a big deal,
Right.
or just being able to have a family at all is a huge deal because they have these limiting factors on them. So you can't take my idea of what I think it would be successful for me and put that anywhere else. It doesn't even always work when I'm just applying it to me.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we also get into, societally when we say, well, everybody has to at least attain this level of whatever. Well, there's a lot of people that maybe don't want all that. They don't want all that responsibility. They don't want all that stuff to take care of. It's just there's a lot of things that we can have, and there have been times where like I actually, like it's that old thing of like, what does the dog do when he finally catches the car? It's like, well, geez, like now I'm here with the car, and so I've had that a few times in my life where I like worked really really hard for something, and then I actually like get the win, and it's like, well, I don't know if I liked the attainment of the goal as much as the
Oh yeah,
chasing of the
sure.
goal.
Yeah, working on my car is a lot more fun when it's done. I sold it.
Yeah, yeah,
Now I've got another one to work on, just mainly just to work on
yeah,
for the fun of tinkering and painting it and getting it, you know. Yeah.
yeah. But I think there's something that we become so hyper focused on the results, and I think just as I get older and I start to think these things through more, you just realize that a lot of the value um, that you find in your life is through kind of the grind of life and who you become, and all the challenges that you over, all the times you blow it and then come back from it, or you know you watch a sports game, and if one team's just killing the other team, ratings aren't very good. But if it's close or there's a comeback going on, like, it's a similar concept. You like those parts of your life where something was really hard and you did it, or something was really hard, it actually broke you and you lost that one, but then you had to get back, get better, either attack that same goal again or pivot and go, well, maybe that's not what I want. And you had a different direction. But those are the things that you find most valuable kind of at the end of your life, I think, or even not that we're at the end of our lives, but I find that stuff really valuable looking back.
So after the Coast Guard.
So after the Coast Guard,
Yeah. After the Coast Guard, I got my.
actually, I wanted to ask you
Oh
this.
yeah, sure.
What kind of a boat were you on? Because you named all these colored boats.
Oh yeah. Well, I got stationed on a construction tender in Florida. That's a black boat,
Okay.
and so we were putting up range towers and day markers all along the canals in the intercoastal waterways of Florida, like in St. Petersburg.
Okay.
And before I got there, they had built a pier, but I wasn't a part of that. But so it was a construction tender. And then I got stationed in Seattle, and I was at port ops. So basically in charge of the barracks, but also just all the ships coming in. We were just in charge of bringing all their supplies out and just giving all the ships moving in and out everything they needed. So I was on boat in Florida, and then I was just on land in Seattle, and then I was at a small boat station in the reserves. And so the reserves are the only units in the Coast Guards that go overseas and do any kind of military, what traditional military kind of exercises. They're over there. Often the Coast Guard would provide security for the Navy, because the Navy's typically on these huge ships. And so Coast Guard would be over there in their smaller boats, escorting people off the Navy boats onto the base of the land. And so anyway, while I was in the reserves, I think they had just got back from Bahrain, and then we were doing all the training, and then I got out, and right after I got out, they went to Cuba. So I actually never went anywhere overseas with my reserve unit. And I always planned to. I got out because I had just started teaching, just bought a house, and I didn't want to go away for 6 months in my first job of teaching.
Yeah.
So after my 4 years was up, I got out, and I always thought I'd join back up, and now it's 20 years later, and I never did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just like that.
Yeah. Happens quick.
But and speaking of your kids or any kids thinking about the military, I think the Coast Guard is at the top of the list.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends what you want, but like I said, Coast Guard is more like a job. So if you just want a job for 4 years where you get, free housing and free health care and good pay and good benefits, tons of benefits after you get out, you can get a job for 4 years, figure out what you want to do, but then they get out and they pay for your housing while you go to school, they pay for your books while you go to school, they pay for all your schooling, and then all the benefits. I still get benefits, the military
Yeah.
benefits
Nice.
20 years later. So there's only
And,
upside.
and
in
did
my
you find that
opinion.
you kind of got to try like a really wide array of stuff? Or was it pretty, do you kind of did the same thing a lot?
Oh, well, the Coast Guard's really small. And so you have a lot of opportunity to try things. Like Coast Guard, I don't know what the number is, but it's like smaller than the New York Police Department.
Okay.
So, it's like
Maybe
maybe
not anymore.
30,000.
A lot of
Yeah,
people
right,
are
right.
retired. I got some friends out there.
So you have the opportunity to do a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to do in other branches. Like if you're in the Navy, you might get stuck on an aircraft carrier, swabbing the deck and cleaning in the galley for 4 years, and that's all you did.
Yeah.
Whereas a Coast Guard, you can move up and get rated and get a different job pretty easily. So if you want to get into the medical field, you can do that. If you want to get in the marine biology field, you can do that. And so you have a lot of opportunity. But for me, no, I was on a construction tender, and then I was in Seattle, and I just did those 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And I was there during 9/11, and so I only made it to an E4, which I at the very least should have made an E5, if not E6. But I only made E4. But part of the reason was I was a bosun mate, and to advance to an E5, you had to get coxswain qualified, which is be able to basically get all signed off to drive a small boat. But 9/11 happened, and I wasn't on a boat unit. So there's one camera. So anyway, I never was able to get signed off on getting qualified on driving a boat because all the small boats were like busy with all the 9/11 stuff. And so anyway, I got everything signed off except for that one qualification and never made E5. But it's all right. I made E4.
Yep. And you've done all right.
Oh, yeah.
Since,
No, it didn't hurt.
Yeah. So
my dad made E5 when he was in the military, and so I'm like, I should have.
So Thanksgiving, now you got to hear it every year.
Yeah.
Nobody outranks him at the table.
That's right.
So you graduate from Centralia High School, right?
Yeah.
And you go to Centralia Community College.
Yeah.
And then you go to the Coast Guard.
Then I go to the Coast Guard.
And then you become a teacher. Now, where did you go?
I went to school. I did 1 year at Shoreline Community College just to take calculus because you needed that to get into the bachelor's of math program, and I didn't have college level calculus, so I had to take calculus 1, 2, and 3 at Shoreline Community College, and then I started the math and teaching program at SPU.
Okay.
So I did 2 years. I took some summer classes at University of Washington just so I could finish in 2 years, get my bachelor's in math and my teaching certificate.
Which coincidentally, I think our friend Thaddeus Odell is a math professor at SPU.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Thad and Aaron. Hey, so yeah, that's funny. So you do that, and this kind of brings us to kind of where we're headed. So you do all that, and now at what point do you meet your wife after you're done with your teaching, or did you?
I taught from 2007 until 2022.
Okay.
And so I taught 2007. I started teaching. Met Lindsay in 2010. Got married in 2011. 2014, we moved to Italy, where I got a job teaching at the Navy base. 2017, I started my YouTube channel, so I was doing that on the side while I was a head track coach and teacher, and I did that all the way up till 2022, and then we moved back.
So you teach locally.
8 years.
8 years, and you're also doing coaching track at that time as well.
Yeah, I was the throwing coach. Yeah.
Okay, and so just all the throwing because
shot, disc, javelin.
Yeah, because didn't both you and I do discus at the middle school?
Oh yeah, I think you and Jeremy and I, because Mr. Spencer took us out and probably showed us how to throw the shot put and stuff like that during math class.
Yeah, that's funny.
And you had I think we had Spencer in 7th grade, and we had Von Rotz in 8th grade, and you and I were both in Mrs. Von Rotz's class for math.
Okay.
And you don't
I
remember
was
that?
probably in the hall a lot.
Probably because you were saying OE, OE.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
I got in trouble a lot
Yeah.
for that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Yeah. I got bored really fast in school. So then I started amusing myself, and then I would get in trouble.
Jason was the bad kid.
Yeah. I wasn't a bad kid. I was a bored kid.
He listened to Beastie Boys and he got kicked out of class. That's a bad
That's a bad kid. Well, then I'm a bad kid for sure. So you're doing that stuff locally, and so how did this move to Italy?
Oh, I had applied every year,
manifest?
actually.
Okay,
while
so
I was
that
teaching.
had like always been on your list.
Yeah, someone had mentioned it, and I just thought that'd be cool. So I had applied for Dodia online. You had to have 2 years of experience. So once I had hit 2 years, I applied online, and the application stays there. So every year you just go in there and change. Now I've taught 3 years. Now I've taught 4 years, and
Yeah.
hit submit, and then wait for a phone call. And I was at a Bible study at Denny's and got an email saying there's a job in Naples, Italy. And I went home and told Lindsay, and took the interview the next day. They gave me the job, and like 20 days later, we were leaving.
Yeah, and now Lindsay is also a teacher. Is that right?
No, right now she's a substitute teacher since we moved back.
Okay, but
prior
she's
to
always...
that, she was when we met, she was like the arts director at Bethel Church.
Oh yeah, I think I did know that.
So she was like leading. She was doing lots of painting and leading some of the plays and that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah. So you guys go to Naples. Is she excited about that?
Oh yeah.
And did you guys have kids yet?
We had John and Natalie we had in 2012, and so then we moved to Italy in 2014, and we had Isaac there in 2015, I think.
So is he a dual citizen then?
No, you don't get citizenship. I mean, he's born on the American base.
That's right.
I mean, we do have an Italian birth certificate. We have 2 birth certificates.
Yeah.
But he's not a citizen.
Yeah.
But it's cool. He was born in Italy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had only planned to go there for 2 years as just like a fun experience.
Yeah. And then you stayed for
how long? But it was
long?
too fun. 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we only moved back because our kids were getting older, grandparents are getting older.
Yeah.
And family is really the most important thing to us. And here we are like playing in Italy, and we're like, oh, family's most important, but
yeah,
we're going to go here and go to the beach. So no, I didn't. So we were like, no, we need to get home. And so I just quit my job and we moved back.
Yeah. And how were the kids with that? Were they bummed? Were they excited?
Oh no, they wanted to move back.
They were ready.
Yeah. Even Isaac, he was born there, but he felt like this was his home in Washington, because we came back every summer.
Yeah.
So we saw his grandparents, and they came over to see him. So they're all very close. So
when your parents have a great place to grow up,
well, that's the thing. I mean, my parents' place is really, you can't beat it in terms of where to live. There's nowhere else. That one property, I don't know where else I'd rather live, but Washington State, I don't know about that, but Thurston County, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But that property, which this is a whole other topic, but has been in our family since the 1860s, and so we're pretty connected to that land and property, and so we've got so much history there. My mom grew up. My mom's mom grew up there. Her dad grew up there. And his dad bought the property. And our deed signed by Abraham Lincoln. But
really?
My mom's cousin has that, not us.
I mean, that is pretty awesome.
Yeah. So coming back here,
so to take that rabbit trail for a second, right? Because I think it's really, this is something I didn't know. I stayed over at your house, and we would ride 4-wheelers out there and hike in the woods and all that kind of stuff. And I had no idea up until not that long ago that your family has such a deep history and connection to this Centralia in particular.
Right. My grandma's grandparents came here in the 1860s. My grandpa's dad was born right when they got off the train here in the 1870s. My grandpa's uncle was like 13 years older, and he's like considered like the first citizen of Centralia, and he was friends with George Washington. In fact, George Washington gave him all. Oh, after George Washington died, they gave his stuff to the church, and the church didn't want that black man's stuff, and so they gave
Well,
it.
that's no good.
So they gave it to my
Is that really
grandpa's
why?
uncle. I think so.
As a race thing. That's so funny because I think one of the things I think is so cool about the area is that, you know,
Well, I mean that's I don't know how much
yeah,
of a truth that
but
is.
I just think it's really it's an interesting thing at a time where, you know, those were obviously real
Right.
factors for
That's the story
people.
I heard.
And you know, for him to actually found a city at that time is actually really cool.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And actually, another person I really want to talk to at some point, Brian Mitge,
Oh yeah.
wrote a book about George Washington.
Yeah, and the cover of that book
So for the
is
people,
that picture of George Washington and
Yeah.
his dog, which was my uncle's picture, or my grandpa's uncle's picture.
yeah. So your grandpa's uncle took the picture that's on Brian Mitke's.
I don't know if he
cover.
took it, but it was his.
Oh.
And he gave it to the city at one point.
He procured it.
Yeah, and so like at the museum, tons of the family history or the city's history was documented by my grandpa's uncle, and so his name was Abbott Townsend. And so like you go there, there's all these written documents of his, because he had this amazing memory, so he could tell all the stories of Centralia, and so there's tons of newspaper clippings of him recounting the early history of Centralia. So he's quoted in all those. I mean, he named all the streets and a lot about all, but he helped lay out the streets in Centralia and name the streets, and even our down tower. A lot of that property used to be my grandpa's property. His family owned it, and then it was passed down to my grandpa. Somehow he didn't want it. He gave it to the city, and so a lot of that tower area between Fuller's and like what Gold Street over there and North Tower used to all be part of my family's property.
Huh.
And there's still a house there that was my grandpa's aunt's house is over there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
That's
so
pretty
we go
cool.
way back in this town.
Yeah. Yeah, which is awesome. And I mean, it's funny because I had no idea.
Yeah.
And probably neither of us cared. And, you know, but yeah, I do love, you know, I do love some of the history of this town. It's a pretty unique place, I think. And, you know, when it's nice here, man, there's like no place on earth I'd rather be. I mean, there's just not, you know, it's not like that all the time, but when it's nice, like you
it's
can't beat
nice.
it.
There's no tornadoes. There's no earthquakes. There's no bugs.
There's no sea monsters.
No sea monsters. So,
like,
yeah, no.
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. You know, when I was in Long Island, I was notorious for wearing people out about how much better Washington was. So if you're from Long Island, I apologize. I've thought about that. I'm like, you know, I bet people probably hated that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was just super homesick. So my bad. Yeah, it's been really interesting to hear some of the history. I don't think people realize how, you know, because it's not a big town that we live in.
Yeah.
But how much history is here. I mean, I think Lewis County is the first county ever established in Washington State, I believe. It's the largest county. I think I heard something that Lewis County has the landmass is bigger than like Delaware. You know,
really?
Like we have a bigger land area as a county than, you know.
Well, I know it used
states.
to be bigger, so I don't know. You know, I think it extended much further north. I don't know.
Yeah, and it did used to be bigger, I think. So yeah, it's a really interesting. It's got a pretty unique history, but yeah, it's really cool that your family's, you know, that considered the first citizen of of the area is pretty cool.
Oh, you know, there's I don't know if you ever saw those Centralia the first 50. Well, yeah, Centralia the first 50 years. There's some books. I mean, we had them in our house all the time, but they're at the library and they're everywhere, I guess. But I always liked it because when I was a kid, there's in the newest editions, my name was in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So how'd you end up in there?
Oh, just that my grandma was a Hilpert, and the Hilpert family came here in the 1860s, and so they were one of the founding the founding families here in the city. So anyway, our name is just in the book as being some of the earliest citizens of the town.
That's funny. So you go through all this stuff. I'm just gonna kind of get back going.
Cut to the chase.
It's like push starting a car. So you get out into Italy, and I think this is really one of the things that I think is most interesting. Is you start this YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And so tell me about like how did that come about? I mean, because when we reconnected and you told me what you were doing, I was like, really? It's not one of the, because you don't love being in front of the camera so much.
Not at all.
Also,
Yeah, I know it was a good fit for
channel,
what I'm doing.
Yeah. So how did that happen? Like walk me through that.
I had a few other YouTube channels. I mean, I think I posted my first YouTube video in 2007. So I mean, I've been posting videos since YouTube started.
And like of what? Just
of my truck, of our family, making family videos.
Okay, yeah.
And and then when I was teaching, I made some teaching videos. And initially those did well, like one had like 15,000 views, and I tell my students, I've got a video with 15,000 views. Actually, my truck video had even more than that. And so at the time, that was pretty impressive.
And that was, I mean, when you were making the teaching videos, was that the first time you thought like, I'm going to make this thing, I'm going to produce this content, and hopefully somebody else will want to watch it?
Yeah, I was going to try to make videos for every lesson in our pre-calculus textbook, but I only got through like a chapter, and it was just too much work. Plus, I didn't like being in front of the camera. So then after I transitioned to like a more of a Khan Academy style, where I just recorded the screen of me writing, and then just recorded the voiceover. But anyway, so then when we moved to Italy, I started another YouTube channel called Harjo Italiano, and so then I just would make family videos of all our Italy trips, and but not for money or for even subscribers, just as a record. And my kids watch them all the time still.
Yeah.
That's the reason I did it. And so our family back home could see everything we're doing.
When I went back to this channel and changed the name of it to facilitate this little venture, I do have one video on there, and it's Joshua changes a tire.
Right.
That's what I had. Actually, that had been viewed several times.
Yeah.
But not by anybody other than my family. Anyways.
Yeah. So I had been in Italy for 3 years, and I think my uncle, and this is 2017, my uncle Canute asked me to film a walk of Naples so he could watch it while he was on his treadmill. And he was like, that'd be a great idea for a YouTube channel, because at the time there were no walking tour channels. There were some walking videos, and I'd looked them up, and the only thing I remember seeing there was some walks of like beaches in Australia or something like that. But there was no walking tour channels.
And this is like what?
2017.
Okay.
So maybe July is maybe when that idea came out. And so, yeah, I mean, right from the start, he and I both thought it would be a good idea for a YouTube channel. So I just created ProWalks, which is the original name. Now it's ProWalk Tours. But ProWalks I started. And the reason I did that is because I was filming everything with the GoPro.
Yeah.
And so I just called it ProWalks, and I filmed a walk of Naples that was a couple hours long. And I thought it was going to be watched by people on a treadmill, so I just walked as fast as I could, which I'm a really fast walker.
I know.
And so I walked as fast as I could without like looking left or right, and just, and so it wasn't really a walking tour, but that video just on its own, and I've never promoted my videos, or at least very, very rarely. And, but anyway, I didn't do anything with that video, and I just started getting views. And then I went to Pompeii and filmed a walk around Pompeii, and that got quite a few views. And then I did the Spanish Quarter of Naples, and then I went and filmed a little hill town near our house. And then I think I went to Rome. You know, I was just posting these on YouTube as, you know, just something fun. It was just a
Yeah.
hobby. It was just a neat thing to do. And
And did you ever consider that you would
oh no,
be able to?
I never thought it would make any money. I mean, I didn't at the time.
Did you even know that you could make money doing that stuff?
Well, that was never really
Like, did you know how YouTube monetized?
no, but at the time, now you need 1,000 subscribers and I think 100 hours of watch time or something to monetize. And at the time, there was a different requirements, but I think you could start monetizing right away. And so, you know, and I would take screenshots on my phone. You know, it's like I'd have, and I still have some of my very first screenshots when I'm at like, you know, 37 subscribers and I've made 13 cents or something. It's like
Yeah.
I've made money, you
Yeah.
know? And so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And, so, I mean, I knew right away that, you know, money could be made, but it was never for money because I never thought you could make any real money doing it.
Yeah.
But it was fun. And I like to explore and I like to travel. I mean, you know, it just fits my style of, well, travel and documenting. I don't want to be in the video. I don't want to talk in the video, but I want
Right.
to explore and share that with others. And so again, for a long time, I was the only walking tour channel. And then, you know, I had some popular videos and I've been doing it since 2017, but then 2020, you know, the COVID hit. And so I've already been doing this for several years, but that I was in Italy, which is kind of where COVID almost didn't start, but I mean, it was one of the first places where it hit. And, but I was able to still travel around for a long time, filming walks when people couldn't travel. And so while people were locked at home, I had new content coming out and, you know, opening people's homes to other parts of the world when they were closed off. And so, I mean, that it took off, but the channel at that point had already had a pretty good following, but through COVID, it grew even more.
So you would say that was kind of a
Well, that was the first. I had
tipping
one
point.
video which was of Sorrento where it was like a dramatic increase, you know, of followers and views. You know, that one video was just like such a big hit. You know, it carried over after that, and then COVID came, and so then that alone kind of was another growth period. And then I've only had really 3 big growth spurts, you know, throughout the channel. That first one with Sorrento, and then throughout 2020, and then I posted a walk of Christmas tour of Nuremberg, Germany on Thanksgiving Day, and that one just took off to like 1 million views really quick.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think one of the things that's crazy is that, you know, it's, you know, kind of a couple of lessons for for anybody out there that's younger trying to figure things out. I think one of the things that I thought was really cool about that story is that, you know, you just do something you like.
right.
You know, and, you know, I think one of the things that gets taken for granted is you got to have a day job, you know, so that you can live. But, you know, also do some stuff you like and see if you can make some money at it. And, you know, even if money isn't the point, you know, you do well enough at something, you know, it just becomes part of the package.
Well, yeah, and money was not even. I was making some money, but it wasn't a significant. I couldn't have quit my job, so only you know 2022 is when maybe the money was significant enough that I could quit my job, and it actually all worked out that I did quit my job, and I was able to not work and continue with the channel, and so I mean it all worked out. But I mean, if I couldn't have quit my job a year before,
Right.
And so I think my kids might be going to bed. Oh no. Did I just make a purchase on my Capital One card? Well, I didn't right now. Check that out. So yeah, it was just a hobby. It was fun to do, but I was consistent. And so, you know, anytime anybody asks me about how can you grow a YouTube channel, I think one of the big things is just be consistent. You know, the YouTube algorithm is looking for content creators that are clearly making regular content, not just random videos because you're not serious about it. So if you're a regular content creator, they're going to push your content if it's good.
Yeah.
So if you make a good video and you make it regular, your channel will grow. You know, anything else, you can't, a lot of people buy subscribers or try to advertise or push their videos out, and if they're or have catchy thumbnails or catchy titles, which unfortunately do work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work. So, in fact, it didn't work. I don't think until now. These AI generated thumbnails, which I
Okay.
wouldn't think would be very popular, seem to be really popular.
Huh.
They're very eye catching.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So obviously all this stuff happens, and you kind of are pleasantly surprised that you're able to actually
Support myself.
right about the time that you're thinking you want to get out of there anyway and kind of reconnect with family and get back into the area. The channel becomes something that can actually support you as you make that transition.
Right. Well, you know, and everything worked out well enough that we moved back. We already had a house here to move back into.
Yeah.
It was rented, and so we moved back in with my parents, and so that was, you know, rent free. And so it's like we had all our cards kind of lined up nicely, and so, you know, if I would have come back and had to have paid our mortgage, I mean, it would have made things a lot tougher. But
Sure.
we had renters, and we were living rent free, and so things just worked out well enough. And I didn't plan to just quit my job and go full-time YouTube, but we moved back at the end of the summer, kind of after teachers had been hired. And so it wasn't a good time to just like move back and get a job that week. And you know, I didn't know where we wanted to live. Anyway, so it all worked out. So I was able to come back and do this YouTube channel full-time, and I posted a new video. Or I post a new video every Saturday. This year, I think my goal was to post a video every Saturday, but I think I've missed 2 Saturdays this year. So didn't quite make the goal, but there's still a lot of videos. Actually, I mean, I've posted more videos than just the videos on Saturday, but my goal was to hit one every Saturday.
Yeah, I was actually talking with some people who are business people. I remember YouTube came up and we were talking about just business stuff. And I remember talking to these guys about how, you know, one of the things I really, and I've never been a YouTube guy, to be honest. I've never been a social media guy. I like being happy and stuff. So I try to stay off that stuff generally. But one of the things I thought was so great about YouTube is, you know, kind of in this new economy that we have with all this digital stuff, it gives access to industries to a wide range of people that never had access to those industries prior.
If you didn't graduate high school, but you know how to work on a car,
yeah,
you can start a YouTube channel and be successful.
Yeah. Well, just, you know, back in the day, if you wanted to get a show on TV,
yeah,
they just guessed.
Right.
You know, you would have some idea, you pitch it to somebody if you could get that meeting.
You had a pilot.
And then you you get some money to do a pilot, and then you do the pilot, and they go, okay, I still think it's good. And then you get, you know, a season, and then if the season goes well and they think you have more seasons in you and there's more seasons of the story and all that stuff, you know, that's how you had to get. And then you'd spend all that money, you know, or the studio would, and who knows, maybe nobody will watch it and it sucks and it costs them a ton of money. You know, the thing that's really cool about these new industries, or these new opportunities that are created by stuff like this is, you know, I love the idea of let's give anybody who wants a crack at this thing a shot, and you can make whatever you want. The catch is you don't get paid anything until after you start generating revenue by way of eyeballs and you know what I mean, because the way that you make money at anybody makes money at this stuff is ad money, and so at some point you got to generate eyeballs that people who spend money on ads want to spend money on. So, you know, I mean, and it's opened up all these genres of things. I mean, who would have? There's no way you go into NBC, in the '80s and go, got this great idea for a show. It's just a lady opening up toys, and all you see is her hands. It's gonna be unbelievable, But like that stuff has ridiculous amounts of viewers on it,
Well, yeah.
And it's like that stuff's. It's so funny. I mean, that would have never made it past the pitch. Like you would have pitched it to the guy who was going to get you into the pitch, and you would have been like, "Come on, man! Are
Right.
you like you've been drinking bathwater or something? Like that's ridiculous."
Well, none of those shows. I mean, there's a lot of topics or ways to frame it, but I mean, a lot of those shows weren't created because people were trying to do something that they loved for fun. They were doing it to generate money and push a product most of
Right.
the time. So
But like,
it wasn't real, and they've found out now that people actually really don't appreciate or don't really care for things that aren't real,
yeah,
and would much rather. I mean, me personally, I haven't watched network TV, well, since before we moved to Italy. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't watched TV in 10 years.
nice.
I watch YouTube every day though.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's something cool about it. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to appreciate, but that's one of the things from a business level that's always been intriguing to me. I mean, there's a number of industries where that has become the case. There's all kind of companies where you can get into them, and the old models used to be, you get a job, that's all based on you convincing the person across the desk that they should pay you money to try,
Yeah.
and then you have a real short window to make it, and then if you can't you know generate enough revenue to make your presence worth it, then you just got booted and then you were considered a failure. This other way of doing things is so cool because it opens it up for people who are maybe late bloomers, people that maybe aren't fast starters. And so you can kind of figure yourself out over time, and it doesn't matter if you fail in the beginning. It doesn't matter if you fail for a year. If you keep trying, and you end up getting good at it, there's a place for you in some of these things.
Well, most likely, if you're interested in something, someone else will be. That's what YouTube is kind of
Yeah.
about. So
Yeah,
if you love fishing, you could probably make a channel,
yeah,
or whatever it is.
for sure. Yeah, but I love the opportunity aspect of it.
Right.
And some of the things that the digital world is creating more of these opportunities. I think businesses in general are starting to see that, it's kind of that gig economy thing, that started happening at a certain point.
I don't know what that is.
Well, it's just where people are they're trying to start businesses part time.
Yeah, gig.
Yeah,
sure.
you kind of have this whole wave of things where people were allowed a shot at, getting into finance, getting into, all these different kinds of industries that historically you had to have like all these other things to get introduced into it, all these barriers.
Well, you
music.
were a financial advisor, right? And you had to get some certifications, I bet.
Sure, yeah, you have to take tests.
But I could start a YouTube channel tomorrow on being a financial advisor.
100%. Yeah, no, 100%. But, even those things, it's, just to give people opportunities to pursue things that historically there was a lot of barriers in
Right.
between that weren't merit-based. It was just, did you know somebody that could get you to the table, And most people don't know anybody, So how do you get out of, so I love stuff like that, and it's really interesting. So I had the opportunity to go with you to Italy on one of the shoots, and it was way more work than I thought it was going to be. Like my idea going into it was way different than what we did, which is not necessarily bad, but it's I only bring that up because I think it's I think, people look at a channel or they look at a show like that and they're like, well, the guy's just walking around with a camera.
Yeah.
But it is way more work than you would think. And I think I think it kind of goes to a couple things that we've talked about is that, they're just as, if you're going to get real good at something, you got to work real hard at it. It was interesting to watch you, the way that you would go about your craft, and that you treated it like a trade or a craft where you're considering all these different things. There's a lot more that went into it um, than I would have thought. You do walk really fast, which is probably good for you and less good for me. We put a lot of miles. Man, that is the hottest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah, that was a rough day in Capri.
Yeah, which Capri was probably my favorite place that we went.
Yeah.
Partly because it's this island, and but there's also some wooded areas in it that I just found that really really cool. Partly because that just kind of feeds the Northwest.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
just
like
went back in September, but I was in Capri, and this time I hiked. I took the lift up to the top of the mountain, and then I hiked all the way down the mountain, which I'd done once before, but I wanted to do it again with a different camera. But anyway, it was nicer because it wasn't as hot.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was like completely
I
bearable.
think
and
I took a
enjoyable.
screenshot that said that like it was like 90 some degrees, and I think it said it feels like 130.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, I'm not joking
And we
about
both
that.
looked like we didn't belong in hot weather because we were grossly covered in sweat.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I I drank like everything that we stopped by. I probably spent like
The peach tea
$1,000 in
stuff.
like
Yeah.
beverages of whatever sort. But yeah, no, it was really cool to go see that, and it was really cool to watch you do your thing, and just see the work and the thought that goes into it. So yeah, so if you're so inclined, ProWalk Tours, right?
That's right.
And unbelievable. I mean, I think one of the things that I've also noticed just in going through is the quality of production that you put into it. You really pay a lot of attention to those kinds of things. So there's spatial audio, there's really high resolution camera work. It's a audio visual kind of immersive tour, and really really kind of a cool thing. So something that we like to put on if I'm just washing dishes, which if my wife's watching, I rarely do. So don't get it. I don't wash dishes very often, but if I do, that's something we put on.
Yeah, it actually makes for pretty good background
Yeah.
atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because you're not hearing anybody talk. You're hearing people talk, but you're not obviously hearing a conversation, and you're hearing it in maybe a different language.
Yeah. And it was also really cool. I mean, one of the things that, we kind of hope to do with this is just to kind of highlight, I went to New York. I lived there for 16 years. When you grow up somewhere like this, I remember vividly people telling me like, oh, people from Centralia don't do anything, this is too small of a town. You can't do anything big. And, you go to New York, and the opposite narrative exists where, if you're from New York, you can just, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere,
Yeah.
which is not true at all. And so neither of those things are true. So one of the things that I think is really cool is, just that whole story, that you have come out of this town, done some really cool things, traveled the world, got this immensely. But now, you were telling me this statistic, and it was insane, but how many people have watched this channel, or how many people watch it like every second?
Well, it's not. Last Christmas, so almost a year ago, was when I had my peak views and stuff. And so anyway, but last December, the average watch time, well, even now, the average watch time is almost like an hour. So I
okay.
get, maybe 100,000 views a day, and the average watch time is an hour per view. So it's quite a bit of watch time. But it was even more last December, where it was like I was getting 18 years of watch time per day.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Really, really cool.
Yeah, 18 years of watch time per day is hard to even, it's, it's a lot of people that just leave it on and put it on the background and put it on all day.
Yeah.
And well, that's one way people consume it, and the other is, well, there's lots, but other people will watch a 5-hour video in 5 hours parts, and they sit there with their glass of wine and just kind of think they're in Italy
Yeah.
or wherever they're at.
Well, yeah, it really is an immersive experience. From somebody who's just kind of on the outside. I'm not a sophisticated set of eyes, but it's a immersive experience, and it was really cool to see. We're out there. I mean, a couple of guys from Centralia, you know, and we're out there, and the amount of people that are like, "Oh, ProWalk Tours." I mean, we're like in Italy, and people can't speak any English other than like,
Yeah.
I know ProWalk Tours.
Yeah, it is pretty strange.
And it's pretty cool to watch that. I mean, it really is a global audience.
Yeah, I was just in Istanbul, and it's like, yeah, well, same thing. Yeah, people are. I watch your stuff. I'm like, it's crazy.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
But they don't know me. I wear a shirt with a logo on it. So if it weren't for that logo, they wouldn't know who I am because I'm not in the video. So
That's true.
I'm not. It's the brand, I guess. Which
But
I'm
we did
happy
make you
about.
shoot a couple things. I don't know. Did you ever post any of that?
No, I didn't.
That's funny.
No,
Yeah, we wrote a couple things and we did shoot a couple things where you're in front of the camera and
yeah, one of
I
them was
guess that
trying
didn't
to
make the cut.
document my quest to find my son a toy before we left and go to all the different toy stores in Naples, Italy. But
yeah, and we did look like literally everywhere. And we did find something. And so we both got some stuff for our kids. And the other thing that I thought was really cool that we did is we went to the place that purportedly is the first place to sell pizza.
Yeah, well, they started out as a like a mobile cart.
Yeah.
But yeah, but
like they invented
company,
pizza.
Well,
is the claim.
Yes, but there's I don't know how recent this was, but there's a painting of Pompeii that was somewhat recently uncovered, and there looks like a
Domino's
pizza
box.
Yeah, it looks like a pizza. But yeah, so this pizzeria was the first one to really, I guess, bring it to the masses, maybe.
Yeah, and they've been selling pizza in that spot for how many years?
Well, I don't know exactly, but they've probably been there 300 years, and before that they were pushing a cart. But I mean, it might even be longer than that. But yeah, it's been there for quite a long time. Most of those buildings in Naples, or at least there's quite a few of them, are from the 1600s and 1700s, and then there's a mass campaign to modernize the city, and so lots of the city was destroyed in the 1930s to build new buildings and stuff, but other parts of the city were obviously kept as it was. So anyway, there's and even so those buildings are old, but there's obviously it's pretty, the Spanish Quarter is it's really cool because there's Mark Twain went to Naples in whatever year that would have been in the 1880s. I don't know.
I'm not smart enough for that.
Yeah.
Don't look at me. We'll have to look at young Jamie over there. No.
But anyway, he wrote his whole experience about
Micah.
going to Naples, and his experience could have been written today.
Yeah.
The way he described the buildings and the people and what was going on hasn't changed.
Yeah. I mean, if you have and I know it's not feasible for everybody to get out there. I mean, I would have never been able to go, obviously, if we didn't go out there for work purposes. But yeah, I mean, it's worth checking these videos out because there's something really special about just looking at all the old architecture. I mean, these are things that we just can't do anymore because of money constraints and time and regulation. I mean, there's a million reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the old architecture. I mean, that just the pizza thing was crazy because I thought I'm eating pizza at a pizza place that's been serving pizza longer than America's been a country.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a wild idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And and we also ran into this guy that happened to be from the same village as your grandfather in Norway or something.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. We run into this couple randomly in Italy.
Yeah. Well, I just heard him speaking Norwegian, but the funny thing was it was like a dialect of Norwegian. I mean, you can hear Norwegian, but it sounded like I was hearing my grandparents speak. So yeah, and he was from the same town that my grandpa was from. So So there must have been something to that.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, I'm watching this stuff unfold, and they find out that he goes, oh, I heard you speak in Norwegian, and my grandpa's from Norway, and he goes, oh yeah, what town? He's like, well, what town are you from? And the guy's like, well, you probably never heard of it. It's like a small, whaling village in the south. And he goes, well, my grandpa's from a small, like which town? I'm sure it's like super tiny. It's just. And then he names the town, and it happens to be.
Yeah.
And then he starts you were telling him about your grandpa, and I guess he's like in some museum.
Yeah, right. So he made
like
I don't
a
know if he
whalers
knew, I don't
museum
remember
or
if he
something.
knew. I think he had just been to that museum or something like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, he knew of those whalers in of the history and the pictures. Not specifically my grandpa, I don't think, but yeah. So it's fun to meet people definitely while I'm out doing this. Which while I'm filming, I can't talk to people. At least I try not to because it interrupts the video. But it is fun to meet people. I'm not really a people person, but just through what I do, it's you meet people. And I just met this guy in Istanbul, and he's just working at a restaurant. But he invited me in for some coffee and told me he'd give me some dinner. And anyway, but it turns out he's like a lawyer. He owns this hotel. He owns another hotel in town. And he's been to San Francisco and all the other places in the U.S. Anyway, it was just interesting to meet somebody that had all these different ventures, but he looks like a guy that's just seating people at a table at a restaurant. And turns out, well, he's kind of got ventures all over, and he hadn't heard of the channel, so he's not that cultured. But anyway, it's fun meeting people. I enjoy that part of it. Like I said, even though I'm not a people person, but it works out.
That's what you think.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Isaac Harjo, the intrepid man.
Yeah.
ProWalk Tours.
ProWalk Tours. ProWalks.com.
Subscribe.
ProWalk Tours on Instagram, Facebook. Subscribe, like, share.
All that stuff.
Click the bell.
And that's and to put a button on it. That's how this all came about.
Right.
Yeah. We just we've been talking about doing this ever since we went on that trip, and so we finally.
That's right. We have been talking about it for quite a while. You obviously must have in your an idea of it before, but I think we both actually brought it up.
A faint idea, yeah. It was one of those things where, you think that maybe you want to do something, but you're like, nobody's gonna want to listen to that, and then
which might still be true.
Yeah, we'll find out. My instincts may have been right on. But and then somebody goes, hey, you know what? And then they say something you've been thinking about. And you're like, well, maybe there's a little validation to that. So we'll give it a shot. But yeah, so if this all goes horribly wrong, this is mostly Isaac's fault. And but yeah, no.
Episode 1.
It was an awesome conversation.
Make sure to name it like 0001 so you can get to
like
the thousands.
Some sort of a negative.
Oh no.
No.
All right.
We'll go back in time. Yeah, all that will get edited out. We'll button it up at somewhere much better than that. But
thanks for having me.
Well, thanks
on your podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Let's cut that part out too.
Yeah.
Okay.